We are extremely grateful and honored to interview a phenomenal man, a man that's making a difference in the lives of thousands of people, a man that is an example to all South Africans, one of the founders of For Afrika, Isak Pretorius. Isak, welcome here.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
I must tell you, I've read a bit about you, and I want to take you back on a bit of an inspirational journey, because I think it's time for us to showcase to the nation what good in this country really means. And I want to take you back to your father, and I've read a statement where he said his life changed when he experienced the suffering of children dying. Peter was your dad. He was a phenomenal man. He was stranded in Mozambique. He was supposed to be there for 1 day. He got stuck there for 10 days. And during that time, he experienced literally like 30 children a day dying. And that's where For Afrika all started. Just tell me a bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, to understand the story and the context even of my dad's statement, you've got to understand a little bit of my dad. My dad grew up incredibly poor. So, he would steal milk. They still had the milk trucks then, Follow the milk truck every morning, and he'd steal a glass bottle of milk from 2 different homes, put in the fridge, jump over the wall 3, 4 in the morning every day, connect a hose pipe to the neighbor's garden tap, fill all their containers and baths and basins with water so the family had water because their water and lights were coming. So my dad grew up understanding what it was to be poor. And yet he said in that experience in Mozambique, I mean, you're right, he was dropped there for a day, by a government aircraft that went to refuel, came back 10 days later. He had 2 bottles of water and a lunchbox. He was there for a day. He spent 10 days living in an IDP camp, like a refugee camp, but for internally displaced people. And 30,000 people there, buried more than 300 people who starved to death in the 10 days that he was there. And he said he discovered poverty, real poverty, for the first time. Even knowing what he knew as a youngster and growing up like he did. And my dad went on in business to do very well. He promised himself he'd never be poor again, and he did that successfully until then, having his life totally redirected and starting For Afrika because of what he had experienced. And the fact that he felt this deep sense of injustice, that these are neighbors. Mozambique's our neighbor. We're all African, actually. I mean, some of us hold a South African passport, some are Mozambican, but we're actually all Africans. And he just was so confronted by that he said, I can't allow this to happen. I've got to do something. And I think some of it was the root of understanding what it's like. He would always tell the story. He was walking home from school one day and he saw a chicken. In the streets of Joburg, a chicken running down the sidewalk. And he said he was on that chicken faster than white on rice, And he said he grabbed that chicken and he wrung its neck and he quickly stuck it under his blazer. And he ran home, so excited, because that night they were going to eat chicken, So I think it comes back to that and the understanding of that. And then also the fact that my dad transformed not just his life, but our family's life, because he understood the power of being an entrepreneur, of working hard, of taking everything that you do have access to and that is given to you and turning it into something. And I think those are the things, plus his love. My dad had a deep love for God. Like he really, it was one of the hallmarks of who he was as a human. And that drove this sense of community in him, of almost what I would call a calling. Like we're called as humans not just to look after ourselves and our family, but to serve others, And I think when you combine all of those, you get For Afrika and what he started. Now, when he started it was about helping these people in Mozambique. He thought it would be short-lived, and he was going to help Mozambique and see what happened from there. Today, We provide direct services this year to, it'll be over 4 million people that we provide services to all over our continent, save hundreds of thousands of lives every year, but do so much more than that. We're empowering so many people to actually have their own businesses, and to be in total control of their own lives, financially, etc., and all of the steps in between. But it all comes back to a man who said, I'll do this. And my dad explained it like this. He said when he was standing there, the second last day he was in that camp in Mozambique, an old man came into the camp and he sat him down under a tree. I've actually got a picture of my dad under that tree, but he sat him down under that tree and he lied to the old man. He said, I'm going to go get you some water and I'll see what food I can get you. He knew there was no food. But he went and he got some water for this old man, and when he came back, he thought the old man had fallen asleep. And he shook him to wake him up. He wasn't asleep. He had died while my dad had gone to get the water. My dad said he stood there and he said out of anger, he actually shouted at God. He said, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? And he said all that he felt inside of him was do whatever you can do.
Sure.
Okay. And that God would be with him in doing that. And that literally was the start of For Afrika. That was one man saying, I'll do what I can do.
Incredible. I want to talk about significance. Sadly, your father passed away in 2018. But before his passing, he made a statement with conviction. And he said the following. He says, I'm ready, both myself and my wife. We're ready to go to heaven. Because this that we have started will carry on for generations. And that's faith.
Yeah.
Not faith in doing good, but rather having faith in my children.
Yeah.
Having faith in my children to pay this forward. And by default, his calling and his purpose became yours.
Yeah.
And I've got to respect you and I've got to take my hat off high because it's not always easy. Isak, let's be honest. I always say, the more you do for others, the more fleck you normally get yourself. And I guess the challenge in that is not only the passion, but the passion, that's going hand in hand with the perseverance. So just talk me through that.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. So, for me personally, I grew up around this. My dad started, mom and dad started For Afrika when I was a young kid. So I always say I had a privileged upbringing. People picture private school, silver spoon. No. Let me explain.
Yeah.
School holidays in a plane with dad to go and work in a refugee camp somewhere on the continent. And why privileged? Why is that privileged? Because I got to understand as a youngster when my heart and my mind were being formed, I got to understand the reality of life. The world we live in is not the reality actually. It's a privileged reality. Yeah. But the reality for most is very different. But part of that reality was discovering that what we call the poor are not poor, they're just poorly paid. They're not actually poor. What they are is people that haven't had opportunity, etc. Okay, and circumstance, and we can get into all of those details. But at the end of the day, what I discovered was people who had family values that I come from a good family, and yet I wished we had their values. Okay, people who understood community and looking after community, and so this was in my DNA because of how I grew up. Okay. Worked for my dad in For Afrika for 13 years. I then went in and started some of my own businesses and built some different businesses over time. And then when my dad died, I came back. And coming back was part of that. It was kind of saying, hang on, this is a legacy that can't stop. It can't even have a bump in the road, really, because of how impactful it is and how important it is. And it's funny because whenever I meet a new staff member in the organization, one of the things I always say to them is, I would never work for an organization where the founder's son is the CEO. Okay. Because most times it's for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Most times it doesn't actually work, or many times it doesn't. But I think the foundation of why this works is that, firstly, this is not anyone's organization. I fulfill a function here as the CEO of the organization. This is not, For Afrika is not mine. For Afrika is Africa's first and foremost. It's actually about serving our continent. So it's almost owned by the communities we serve. And those communities hold us to account. They really do, But it's also owned by every single staff member. It ebbs and flows, but at the height this year, over 3,000 people working as staff or contractors in what we do. Every single one of them have some level of an ownership in it. But many of them come from the very communities where we're working, whether that's humanitarian or commercial type service. They come from that community. They understand their community. They know the impact that's being had. And so for me, it wasn't a case of, it was more a case of saying, I have to be a part of ensuring that this legacy continues and that the impact of it continues and play whatever role that is. And I feel privileged to do it. I feel privileged to carry on where our family started.
You're talking about legacy, and by definition, a legacy is to leave something longer and better and longer lasting than yourself. And I must tell you, we have to trust God's divine timing. I always, joke, because I said to Michael earlier today, I believe God got a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And he's got two times. He's normally late or very late, but he's always on time. Now I'm sitting here and I'm inspired because I was one of those kids. At 10, my father drank himself to death and my mother threw me away. I was a gifted sportsman, and I never had hope. Hope's a wonderful thing. We cannot really explain what it does, but we know how it feels. And there was a lot of times in my life where I was hopeless, and I had no foundation. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking of a Peter or Isak coming into a refugee camp or in a rural area in Africa and providing one child with hope. Only one child. And that's all you need, because at the end of the day, you never know what God's plan is for the little boy or girl, and pity that we in South Africa, exactly like you said, I think most South Africans miss the bus. We chase things. We talk about financial success, and then we talk about significance. And I believe if God's got that plan for you, you can enjoy both. But significance is what it's all about. And I must honor, and I've watched some of the videos of Peter. What a phenomenal man he was. And for me, the timing, the South African, why did I start the South African Hall of Fame? We say we celebrate great achievements, but why? We need to inspire our youth, and then we need to empower them to holistically reach their full potential. Then you've reverted to holistic. And what's striking to me is holistic is body, mind, and soul. And as for Africa, you address all three of those segments. You don't only give food to the hungry, you address the holistic body, mind, and soul approach.
Yeah, very much so, and a lot of it does come from this foundation of hope. I love what you say about hope, and thank you for being prepared to be vulnerable and share some of your story. I think I personally feel the biggest currency that any human has is the currency of vulnerability. Because when we're prepared to be vulnerable and we invest that in somebody else, the return on investment is life-changing. Okay? Because what does it do? Many times vulnerability gives up. You share your story. Someone says, if you can do it, and look at the success you are. Look at if you can do it, I can do it. Okay, and we say hope isn't a nice to have, it's a game changer. It truly is a game changer.
So right.
And that's what it does. You bring hope. You bring a game changer. Okay. And yes, it requires a holistic approach, and we believe in that holistic approach, because if you can't, transformation comes when there is that holistic approach, and when you're addressing the different elements. And that's why, as an organization, people will say to me, well, you give a fish you feed for a day, you teach to fish you feed for a lifetime. And I say, yeah, I hear you. Nice proverb. Okay. Problem with proverbs: simple statements, powerful in their intention. But things like solving food security in Africa, complex. It's not a simple thing. And so it takes a multifaceted, it takes giving a fish at times, because that keeps the person alive long enough to learn how to fish. What's the point of teaching someone who starves to death?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes we have to give a fish. Other times we've got to teach to fish, but we also can't stop there. We've got to create the factories that process the fish. We've got to create the economy that drives that engine. But we've also got to take care of the individual, the human, and so it's mind, it's body, it's spirit. But all of that does come from this foundation of hope.
Sure.
Game changer.
You're 100% right. And can I tell you, it might sound funny to you. When Michael came to me and he says to me, listen, Johnny, I met this amazing guy. And the South African Hall of Fame, we're probably going to do the biggest fundraiser in South Africa next year, called the CEO Cycle Challenge, where we're going to challenge CEOs to come participate in a fishbowl at Monte Casino from 13 to 18 May. 25 minutes of the time, and we're going to make a massive impact, because what our core ideology says is we want to create opportunities for talented children that's living in despair, that's hopeless. What really fascinated me, and I knew immediately I'm dealing with a godly man, because Isak Pretorius could have come and says, but you know what, yes, the Hall of Fame is doing a great work. We're almost doing the same at For Afrika. Now we're also looking at the poor and the needy and the hungry. But immediately you came and said, yes, but how can we collaborate and how can we assist? And you're also part of the YPO group.
Yeah.
And that took me back, and I said, if that's the attitude of this man, he's really not in it for himself. He's really in this to make a difference. And I've got to respect and honor and thank you for that. And I would like to get to the psychology of that, of the thinking process, because you rarely found that in anyone.
Well, firstly, let me say thank you to you and all you're doing with the Hall of Fame. I mean, part of where that comes from is I believe in what you're doing. I think what the Hall of Fame is doing, yes, it's recognizing, but actually in doing that, you're creating hope. And then you're putting your money where your mouth is. You're saying, no, this is all so that we can actually invest in those who don't have the opportunity. The next Mapimpi or the next Yosia, that's what it's creating. So I hugely appreciate that, and that's where the connect came immediately of saying, what can I do to help? I serve in a role in For Afrika, but where my heart is and what I believe is for our continent and our people, and it starts. This is my birth country, so for me, South Africa more than anywhere else. Okay, although I do see myself as an African first and a South African second. So for me, yes, I fulfill a role in For Afrika, but that doesn't mean that that's where my heart, mind, or investment should stop. It has to be to see who else is doing work that's maybe in the same space or a different space that is as impactful or more impactful, that we can get behind, and we can, because I think this is where we often miss the boat, particularly in South Africa. We don't realize the power of just coming together.
100%.
Let's put aside let politicians have the nonsense conversations, okay, of, we're better than you because we're going to this and we're going to that, and why don't we just come together, whether we're black, white, colored, Indian, whatever we are, whether we come from wealthy families or we come from poor families, whatever it is, why don't we just come together and say, but this is for the good of the nation? because when it's for the good of South Africa, it's for the good of me, for the good of my kids and my grandkids. Okay. And so for me, that really was the driver of saying, wow, I love what Hall of Fame is doing. I'm also sports insane. Okay. So
we all are.
So it was a case of saying, hang on, I can identify this and I want to support what you're doing. I want to get behind what you're doing. And that's why we said, listen, we'll also put our money where our mouth is. We'll put our hand up to be a part of the Cycle Challenge and to support it, financially as well, and get behind this. Why? Because it's so important. And what you're trying to do and mobilize these CEOs, well, that triggered the YPO Connect. Because as a YPO, I've had the privilege of being part of that phenomenal organization, which is also absolutely.
You're the chair, am I right?
So regional chair for Africa. Yeah. So, and what a privilege to give back and serve the organization because of what I've got out of it. It's made me a better leader. It's made me a better CEO. But more importantly, it's made me a better dad. It's made me a better husband. Okay. It's made me a better me. I like myself more from the growth and the learning that's been there. And so I said, hang on. Yeah, we've got, just in South Africa alone as YPO, over 400 CEOs that are YPO members. To be a member, you have to have a business over a certain size, etc. So these are all CEOs who can afford to and should be supporting Hall of Fame and what you're doing with it. I said, hang on, we got to mobilize in South Africa those over 400 CEOs. I'm hoping every single one of them signs up again and says, no, come on, we got to be a part of this and get behind it.
Yeah, can I tell you, I'm a very talkative person and you're actually making me emotional, to be honest. And I must tell you, let me share my heart with you. I want to involve 400 CEOs, not because of the money.
Yeah.
You've said it. What's the significance for me? Can all of us have Springbok colours? Most definitely. You can have a Springbok. You can have Springbok colours in being a good father.
Wow.
You can have Springbok colours in being a good dad to your children, good husband to your wife, good businessman. And you can have Springbok colours in really giving back and caring and being part of something bigger and longer lasting than yourself. And that's my heart. Because in 10 years from now, when one of those boys or girls stand on the podium on the world stage and they said it all started with the CEO Cycle Challenge and with YPO and with For Afrika and the South African Hall of Fame, it's not about us. It's about giving opportunities. Isak, I've had many interviews in my life, many, and I've been privileged. I've got so much respect for you. I think the Holy Spirit is connecting with them. I'd love to spend more time with you, and I can certainly promise you that the Hall of Fame from our side commit to doing whatever we can to help your organization. Again, God's timing, and I know that His plans are not ours, and we're going to trust Him. And I believe that something significant is going to come from this. And I thank you from the depth of my heart. I thank you for your heart. Thank you for your character. And my biggest prayer from a South African Hall of Fame perspective is that God will use you strongly and powerfully. Our reward will be in the next life, and while we let's make a difference, let's make an impact. But I thank you, I respect you and I honor you.
Thank you. And I feel the same. I mean, for me, this is an honor to be connected to Hall of Fame. We want to support, as I say, what you're doing, and really, and I see that there's a lot that can be in that. I look forward to spending more time together because I would love to also gain from and learn from your wisdom and walk this journey together. And I think the key thing is our hearts are the same.
Exactly the same.
So, which is a beautiful thing. But for me, I think there's so much practically. If you look at who's the future inductee into the Hall of Fame in 30 years' time, is some child that has zero hope, that is living with maybe 4, 5, 6 other siblings, possibly in some corrugated iron structure that leaks every time it rains, that's freezing in winter, that's crazy hot in summer, that doesn't have a proper sports field to play on, that doesn't, and could also become the next inductee into our prison system.
100%.
Or they could be the next inductee into the Hall of Fame. What changes that? The conversation we're having today.
100%.
The CEO getting behind it and saying, hey, I'm going to get involved here. For Africa being able to come alongside that kid and say, hang on, you don't stand on an Olympic stage or a World Cup or because you had great sports talent. It's more than that. It's because you had nutrition as a kid.
100%.
How many Siya Khaleesi's have we lost in this country because they just never had nutrition? Just no nutrition. Okay? So the bodies, minds, etc. didn't grow the way they needed to grow. So, for me, I look at those elements and I say, that's why our biggest program in South Africa is early childhood development. Because we spotted a gap there and we said, hang on, there's kids who are not getting food in the most critical time. We've lost the battle after that in some ways. Okay, so I think there's so much that we could be doing together to actually, be providing what's needed. Sport is such a beautiful thing because most kids who play rugby will never ever play for the Springboks or for a provincial team. But I love what you said. They can be Springbok dads. They can be Springbok citizens of this country.
100%.
And how they're going to get there. The dynamics, one of them is what they learn in team sport.
100%.
And the reason I encourage, I hope my son does watch this. I don't know if my son will ever be a provincial or Springbok rugby player.
He's going to be a Springbok.
Senior level. Okay. Yeah. I hope he will be because he loves the game that much. Why do I want him playing rugby? Because I want him to learn all the dynamics that team sport's going to teach him. He's going to learn how to lose. Yeah. He's going to learn how to win. Yeah. He's going to learn how to get knocked down and have to grit his teeth and stand up again when his shoulder or his whatever it is hurting so much that you feel like you can't, and you get up. And why? Because you're a team, you keep going. He's going to have to learn how to deal with arrogant idiots on his team and with really nice, cool people. Okay, and so all these dynamics. Now, when we are able to bring that to communities that have no hope, and then we do this combination of we bring them the ability to have that hope and that and to engage in sport, and sometimes it's just so that I can smile.
Exactly
so
that.
I can laugh.
Exactly that.
But then we bring the nutrition, we bring that. And that's where I'd love to see this go. I'd love to see us, and we believe in partnership. And so we would love to be able to see For Afrika and Hall of Fame, in a really tight partnership, and to bring others that we work with.
If you asked me yesterday, I would have said to you the Hall of Fame is doing well. If you asked me today, I said we need For Afrika, and we need you, and we need the collaboration and like-minded people with a passion, with art. I thank you so much. It's the honor has really been mine. I've learned a lot. I'm driving away here today with a full lot. Thank you very much.
I'd love to leave you with this because you said something about one person, that one person getting hope. You were that one person at one stage in your life. And I don't know your full story, but somebody obviously brought something in. So people ask me why I do what I do, and I share the story with them. South Sudan, I was in my young 20s. I was sent there by my dad to set up our operations in South Sudan, in the middle of the civil war. Crazy experience. Okay. And we flew in with an aircraft, 6 tons of cargo, unloaded this. We were working with communities that had absolutely nothing. I mean, we literally were their lifeline. Okay, they lost everything. Went in the first aircraft that left. We were waiting for 2 more planes to come in, and we had everything set up. And suddenly, people started coming out the bush, walking from quite far away. And this is where people in the aid industry lose their lives. Desperate people and more people than what you've got resource. We had planned for this group, not for these people around. So we went to meet them where they were coming from. So I separate this and try and manage the situation. And I walked up to a lady. I'm a sucker for kids. Okay.
Yeah, me too, I must tell you.
Kids are.
Yeah.
And so I walked up to this lady. She had a young baby in her arms. And I just naturally went to her and just kind of, and as I took this lady's baby, I realized this kid was like almost like comatose and it was so hot. And she started crying, just profusely crying. And I looked at this lady and in my ignorance, I said to her, are you crying because you're worried about how sick your child is, that he's going to die? And she started shouting at me. I mean, literally shouting at me. My interpreter was trying to keep up with what she was saying, but she kept saying the same thing over and over again. She said, I've got 3 children. She said, when they attacked my village last night, she said, I can only carry 1. She just kept shouting that at me. And I looked at this woman and I was so angry at first because I couldn't believe she did that. I thought I would die with my 3 kids. How do you save 1 and leave 2 of your kids to die? And then I realized that this woman had more depth of character and more strength than I would ever have.
Sure.
Because she made the decision to believe in the power of 1.
Sure.
To say, 2 of my kids are going to die today, but I'll save 1. And I looked at this woman, and there, that day, standing in what felt like a God-forsaken place, I made a commitment to myself that for the rest of my life, I will serve the power of 1.
Sure.
Because everyone wants to change the world. You talk to people, success comes, then now they want significance. I want to change the world. I'm going to change it like this. I'm going to change it like that. But how do you change the world? You change one person's life. So that lady, we honored her commitment by taking care of her child. That kid went to a school we have there, got school meals, and so we changed the trajectory and we honored her commitment so that her child could have a life, which is a beautiful thing. But the reality of what I got out of that day, you change the world by changing 1 life. Because if I've changed your life, I've changed your world, which means I've changed the world. Okay. And that's what Hall of Fame's doing. That's what For Afrika is doing. That's what every CEO who says, I can give up 25 minutes of my time and some money, okay, to be a part, that's what they do. They're changing the world because they're going to change 1 or 2 or 3 lives, but they're changing 1 life at a time, changing the world.
The Bible teaches us, as a man is in his heart, so he is. I need to tell you. I don't know how many interviews you've seen in your lives. I was the closest to this one, and it's probably the best interview I've ever had. I'm privileged, I'm honored, and my inspirational stories like this changed the lives for only 1. And the ripple effect of that will be significant. I thank you.